It's essential to note that economic issues and government actions can be highly complex and context-dependent, and not all actions by governments are intentionally designed to cheat or harm poor people. However, there have been instances where economic policies or practices disproportionately affected vulnerable populations. Here are some examples of ways in which poor people may be systematically disadvantaged or cheated economically by certain government actions. 1. Corruption and embezzlement. Corruption and embezzlement involve the misuse or misappropriation of public funds or resources by government officials for personal gain. In these instances, individuals entrusted with public resources divert them through bribery, kickbacks, or other illicit means, undermining the intended use of funds for public services, infrastructure development, or poverty alleviation programs. Such practices contribute to economic inequality, hinder social progress, and erode public trust in governmental institutions. Example: government officials divert funds allocated for poverty alleviation programs, public services, or infrastructure projects for personal gain through bribery, embezzlement, or other corrupt practices. Impact: limited resources meant for the poor are siphoned off, hindering the effectiveness of poverty reduction efforts. 2. Unequal taxation. Unequal taxation refers to a system where certain groups, often low-income individuals, bear a disproportionate burden of taxes compared to wealthier counterparts. This can occur through regressive tax policies, such as sales taxes on essential goods, leading to a higher percentage of income being levied on those with lower earnings and exacerbating economic disparities within a society. Example: implementation of regressive tax policies that disproportionately burden low-income individuals, such as sales taxes on essential goods and services that form a significant portion of poor households' expenditures. Impact: the poor end up paying a higher percentage of their income in taxes, exacerbating economic inequality. 3. Land displacement and exploitation. Land displacement and exploitation involve actions by governments or powerful entities that result in the forced removal of communities from their land or the extraction of natural resources without fair compensation or consideration for local livelihoods. These practices can lead to the displacement of vulnerable populations, loss of homes, and disruption of traditional ways of life, contributing to increased poverty and social injustice. Example: governments may engage in land grabs or allow powerful entities to exploit natural resources on land inhabited by poor communities without fair compensation or consideration for their livelihoods. Impact: displacement, loss of homes, and disruption of traditional livelihoods contribute to increased poverty and vulnerability. 4. Inadequate social services. Inadequate social services occur when essential public services like education, healthcare, and housing are underfunded or cut, disproportionately affecting low-income individuals who heavily rely on these services. Insufficient access to education and healthcare perpetuates a cycle of poverty, limiting opportunities for social mobility and exacerbating economic inequality. Example: cutting or underfunding essential social services, such as education, healthcare, and public housing, disproportionately affecting the poor who heavily rely on these services. Impact: limited access to education and healthcare can perpetuate the cycle of poverty, limiting opportunities for social mobility. 5. Inflation and economic mismanagement. Inflation and economic mismanagement occur when governments implement poor macroeconomic policies, leading to rising prices and devaluation of the currency. The resultant erosion of purchasing power disproportionately affects low-income individuals, particularly those with fixed incomes, contributing to financial instability and a decline in the overall standard of living for the poor. Example: poor macroeconomic policies, including high inflation rates or currency devaluation, can erode the purchasing power of the poor, particularly those who rely on fixed incomes. Impact: rising prices of basic goods and services make it difficult for low-income individuals to afford essential necessities, leading to a decline in their standard of living. 6. Exclusionary economic policies. Exclusionary economic policies involve the implementation of measures that disproportionately favor the wealthy or privileged classes, such as tax breaks for high-income individuals or corporations without commensurate benefits for the less affluent. These policies can exacerbate income inequality, hinder economic opportunities for the poor, and perpetuate social disparities by concentrating economic gains among the privileged few. Example: implementing economic policies that disproportionately benefit the wealthy, such as tax breaks for high-income individuals or corporations, without corresponding benefits for the poor. Impact: economic policies that favor the rich can widen income inequality and hinder economic opportunities for the poor. 7. Lack of financial inclusion. Lack of financial inclusion occurs when certain segments of the population, often the poor, are excluded from accessing basic financial services like banking, credit, and insurance. This exclusion hinders economic growth and mobility for marginalized individuals, limiting their ability to save, invest, or start businesses, and perpetuating a cycle of financial vulnerability. Example: maintaining financial systems that exclude the poor from access to credit, banking services, and other financial resources. Impact: limited access to financial services can hinder economic growth and limit opportunities for poor individuals to escape poverty through entrepreneurship or investment. 8. Exploitative labor practices. Exploitative labor practices involve the mistreatment of workers, often characterized by low wages, unsafe working conditions, and inadequate labor rights protections. When governments tolerate or overlook such practices, workers, particularly those in vulnerable economic positions, face exploitation, hindering their ability to achieve fair compensation, job security, and improved living standards. Example: allowing or turning a blind eye to exploitative labor practices, such as low wages, unsafe working conditions, and lack of workers' rights protection. Impact: poor workers face economic exploitation and struggle to achieve better living standards, perpetuating a cycle of poverty. 9. Unfair trade policies. Unfair trade policies refer to international trade practices that disadvantage certain industries or workers, often in less economically developed countries. These policies can lead to job losses, economic hardships, and increased inequality for vulnerable populations, particularly those dependent on agriculture or small-scale industries, as they face challenges in competing with larger, more powerful entities in the global marketplace. Example: engaging in international trade practices that disadvantage local industries and workers, leading to job losses and economic hardships for the poor. Impact: vulnerable populations, particularly those dependent on agriculture or small-scale industries, may suffer from increased competition and market volatility. In conclusions, it's crucial to recognize that these examples are not exhaustive, and the impact of government actions can vary based on the specific context, policies, and governance structures in place. Additionally, efforts to address these issues often involve comprehensive reforms, increased transparency, and the active participation of civil society in holding governments accountable for their economic policies. Kindly explain more about your thoughts in this regard. If you liked this short analysis, kindly pass on to your politically, socially, economically interested people who can contribute more on these topics. Thank you.